the organizer of the London CTOs and run RecWorks, which is a recruitment company. But we do loads of stuff in tech communities, like we've been organizing this for 10 years. So yeah, if anyone wants to read more about our work or what we do, feel free to read the link there. Other than that, I'll hand over then to our speaker, Ori Keren, today.
Thank you very much. And thanks everybody for joining. I'll jump right to it. My name is Ori Keren. I'm the co-founder and CEO of LinearB. I'll explain more about LinearB later and what we do, but basically a little bit about myself. I began coding at 10. I saw that some of you were talking about the aspect of how do we make sure that people not game, metrics, and how do we keep the right culture. So as a developer, I started coding at 10. It really it's in my blood. I'm really obsessed with making sure that if we deploy metrics, we do it the right way. Still remember how it was to be a developer. So it's important for me to say that. I'm a startup guy. I was a team leader, VP of engineering, VP of R&D, made 2 super interesting journeys with companies, startups that we took from, the first couple of developers up to scale the team up to 100 people. So I've seen, what it, the challenges and what it takes to build big teams. And now I'm, sitting at the CEO chair, so it's even more, it's interesting. I have, there's debates internally, what's more difficult, to be a VP of engineering or CTO or to be a CEO. I've seen both of those angles. I live in Tel Aviv. I'm speaking to you from Tel Aviv right now. So I think that's kind of set the background for myself, and we'll jump right through what we're going to cover today. So we'll start with our engineering scorecard. We'll show you the scorecard, and we'll dive into elements of the scorecard, and I think it will kind of spark a conversation once we touch each one of those elements. And feel free, this is the style that I like, is if you have a question, feel free to ask and stop me, or I think that's the best the way to keep it interactive. So we're going to do a breakdown of all the scorecard and then each metric, what it means. We can cover those aspects of, does this metric hurt your culture, or how can you deploy it the right way so it doesn't damage your culture, etc. Then I'm going to talk a little bit about strategies of how to translate engineering to executives. I can tell you that for me, this was as a VP of R&D and then CTO, it was one of the challenges. I always felt like I'm trapped between almost 2 parallel universes, 2 worlds where one, I could dive into a conversation about the microservice and what's the right architecture and the database throughput and all very technical stuff. And then I would go into the executive meeting as a VP of R&D, especially in the early days. And, I was trying to drive some of the technical conversation into the executive table, and it was hard. Some of the conversations that were there were all around the business, and it was hard for me to tie a connection between the business to stuff that's happening in the engineering. And we're going to talk about that today. How can you paint that, draw a line and draw that connection so people can see start to show interest. My peers, when I finished my role VP of R&D in a company called Cloudlock, they were actually, at the end, they were actually very interested in the development process and what's happening in each phase and what does it mean. So I think that's a thing that, can be adopted. And then, of course, question in the middle. And if you want, at the end, we can also do a concentrated session about Q&A. So this is the scorecard. At LinearB, we use it first internally. So my engineering director, when we have our staff meeting every Monday, and we go through the department, sales, marketing, etc. The engineering manager comes with this one deck, and he shares the data that we have. And because, you know, we believe in dog food, so we use our product on ourselves. We use the scorecard that we put on ourselves. You'll see like 5 areas. There's the weekly metrics, and I'll talk about them in a second. There's the investment profile. There's the team delivery metrics here. Major efforts, meaning like what kind of projects, you know, the team is working on right now, and what like keeps them busy. And then costs. And sometimes I've seen like people altering costs to uptime. It all depends on the company and, you know, what are the pain points at this point, but we'll talk about that. So let's go and jump into the areas. The first area that I want to cover is the 4 key metrics that I think that every CTO or VP of R&D should bring to the table, to the executive table. I want to go and cover them. The first one is called cycle time. we call this internally a super metric, because it's not one metric. It's actually, you know, constructed out of like many segments. But basically, to put like in simple words, cycle time will tell you how much time it takes from one code is being written and committed, until it reaches production and, you know, meets the customers. And on the way, there are a couple of, you know, gates, right? There's like, this code needs to be reviewed. And then, you know, how much time it takes like to do a first review, how much time it takes like to complete a review and merge it. Sometimes the code is merged, but we don't have like a, you know, a CD deployed on all of our services. So it's going to sit there for like 2 or 3 days until it's going to be released. Cycle time kind of take all of that and says, okay, this is your average time. I've seen our internal team take cycles from the areas of 10 or 12 days to the areas of 2 or 3 days, which is, we're trying even to improve better and to take it like to less than a day. But this is a metric that will tell you, I think if you have to choose one, it will tell you how smooth is your development pipeline is working. My second, you know, metric that I think you should bring to the executive table as part of like the main ones is PR pickup time. So if you think about it, PR pickup time is a segment inside cycle time, but this is the strongest signal you'll get about how close your team is working together. And at the beginning, you know, one of you asked a question about like gaming metrics, and about how can we deploy metrics without ruining the culture. So one of the philosophies that I really believe in is that most of the metrics, almost, if not all of them, should be concentrated on team level. If we go and we start comparing developers one to another, and we say, you know, who's writing more code or committing more, that's not the kind of culture that we want to bring. KPIs will have like a very, very strong impact on our culture. But if we say, hey, PR pickup time is one of the most important metrics for us as a company, then we're encouraging positive culture, right? People are helping each other, and they're not working in silos and not seeing their peers. So that's a very strong signal on teamwork. The third one is deployment frequency. Are you guys familiar with the DORA metrics, with the 4 DORA metrics? See some of the people nodding, and so great. So deployment frequency is really important. Deployment frequency will tell you if you're deploying, again, if you are able to you know, put the right infrastructure in terms of quality, test coverage, and a CD, you know, kind of infrastructure to help you release more than 1 time a day, 5, 10, sometimes 20 times a day, you're on the right path. If your team still releases, you know, every 3 weeks, every 4 weeks, that's usually something that will, it's not, you know, binary or black and white, but it will usually lead to big releases with a lot of dependencies. And usually when there's an explosion, when something goes wrong, it's harder to restore out of that. It's not that it's not possible, but it's harder. So again, think about it almost like pressure that's being released from a system. If you deploy all the time, you're releasing pressure from your system. So I heard in the past people talk about, yeah, but our business we don't need to release my business need to release every 3 weeks. That's good enough. So I think that's great, but what I recommend to those teams, still build something internal that deploys the code, every day or a couple of times a day. Even if officially you release every 3 weeks, make sure you, I don't know, deploy to a staging environment or start that process of deployment earlier. So that's the third one. The fourth one is rework or code churn. I love this metric. It will show you how much, of your code that passed all the gates, was already released, is being churned, meaning within the first 3 weeks, you're already refactoring some of it. And again, refactoring is a healthy thing for a software team. But if you are refactoring the code that you just released within like 2 or 3 weeks, it can tell you two things. One, there was the problem, usually a quality problem, and we need to fix it and address it. The second thing that could be, it could be like a misalignment between requirements to what was delivered, right? So a lot of time we'll deliver something and then we'll see that it's not what we wanted, and we will have to adjust, So if you see areas of 3-4% of your code being churned, it usually means that one of these issues is happening. So those are, if anything, when we are, by the way, internally in our staff meetings, when we don't have a lot of time and we have 5 minutes, those are the 4 metrics that the engineering manager is bringing to the table, the most important ones. I'll continue to the second part. Something is chopped in the deck, but I can fill this one for you. So this is the investment profile. Investment profile will tell you, are we working on bugs versus stories versus non-functional? And there's no right and wrong here. There's no, this is good, this is bad. It's it's about awareness that this is where the focus is and this is what we're working on right now. So I can tell you that there were times that probably all of you had initiatives to increase the quality and attack some of the bugs that are out there. It will just give you transparency to where time is invested. Another very important thing, are we investing enough time to generate more value, right? Sometimes we think that we're in control and we understand everything that is happening, but the team is being pulled to bug fixing and a lot of customer issues, and the epics and the stories that we wanted to push forward are not moving. So this will show you, it will give you a strong signal whether this is happening. And the last thing is about technical depth and non-functional. Also very important to continue the investment in infrastructure and non-functional stuff. So, when you pass through an iteration and there's no investment in non-functional, it usually means that, we should probably think about it for the next one and invest more time there. Before I go to the third aspect, I want to see if you guys have questions so far that you want to ask.
Can you explain the metric PR pickup time? I'm not familiar with that.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So PR pickup time will tell you how much time will take from once a PR is issued. Let's say, again, I'm working on something and I'm issuing a PR, how much time it takes until the first, developer, one of my peers or a team leader, starting to comment and starting to address and start a review there, basically. Right? So yeah.
Got it. So PR stands for peer review.
Yeah, PR. Okay, so PR stands for pull request, which is when you work with GitHub, it basically means, okay, I worked on this chunk of work. I'm ready to get it merged to the main trunk. So I'm issuing a pull request. and then basically somebody needs to review it before it gets merged. I can have a policy that I'm saying, no, you know what, nobody, my internal policies, I don't want, it's okay that it's not being reviewed. I've seen that. I've seen people who are saying nothing goes without a review. I think the truth is somewhere in the middle. In GitLab, you would call them merge requests, MRs, and not PRs. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, perfect. Thanks.
Yeah, sure.
I've got a question, Ori.
Yeah, sure.
Hello there. Thank you very much, Talk. So one question I've got is around R&D and research and how that fits into it. So think of tickets which don't necessarily have a fixed end or could be dead ends. If everything is, completely predictable and, their engineering tasks are there, but things like data science, things like open source development, how does that fit in and how do you make sure that doesn't detriment these metrics?
Yeah, that's a great question. So definitely seeing it with our customers. One of the things we recommend is, of course, building your teams, and these metrics should be on a per team basis. So I'm not comparing the data science team versus, I don't know, like some infrastructure team or feature team, because the cadence is different, right? With data science, there's models, you release them, you check them, there's like different dynamics. It's all about us as a team, each team taking responsibility and saying, okay, this is our baseline, and now we want to decide what we want to improve.
So does that mean that these don't necessarily work with interdisciplinary squads?
Well, actually, with like when you say like interdisciplinary, like there's guilds, right? Like data science, front end, back end. But you're talking about a squad that has all like the disciplines, right? That's what you said. You with me? Did we lose it?
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
So let me answer it like for both perspectives. Again, if there's like a data science team or a front-end team, which is basically not like a squad that is like autonomous and releasing on their own and doing all the capabilities and all the skills for themselves, it's what I told you before. I wouldn't compare like a front-end team versus like a back-end team. It's all about each guild or each like group like that building their own baseline and trying to improve from there the things that are important for them. So that's one thing. For squad, it's actually better because, yeah, usually you'll have like a front-end person, a back-end person, a data scientist, an infrastructure person. You still want to preserve like the same cadence. So, and again, I wouldn't compare the people inside the team. It's all about how the team operates as a unit. If you have to take, two things out of this session, is one, use cycle time. That's like the best metric ever. And the second is apply this to teams and create. If you're afraid from a competition being like happening inside your org, make sure it's happening at the team level, not in individual level. Like then it's a little bit more healthy, and so I hope it answers.
Thanks, Ori.
Yeah, sure. So we'll continue, and if there are more questions, we can follow up next. A couple of other metrics. By the way, all the other ones, feel free. Like, so we talked about PR pickup time, we talked about cycle time. I think all the other ones are pretty straightforward. Okay? Or if you have questions, again, feel free to stop and ask me.
Ori, no, what I really like about this is where you say you have the super metric is all about delivery, which you could consider that as across teams. But then you have a teamwork metric, a throughput metric, so an effectiveness metric, and then you have the requirement alignment, metric. They might differ between different sub teams, but the principle is still sound, I think, across all the teams. So really good. I like it.
Oh, great. Thank you. Yeah. So we were here, and this is the third part, which is team-based delivery metrics. This is, again, when you dive more into the team level. It also can be applied, it depends on the size of the organization, but Some other things that we seen a lot of like customers and friends and prospects use, and ourselves internally we use a lot. So another very important thing is again the pull request size. And if you don't work with pull request, it could be again a branch or a work unit of work. That's the important thing. I'll give you an example. Developers can take like an epic or a story and work in one big branch, right? A feature branch, and just work on that and commit to that. And then the age of that branch will be like 2 or 3 weeks, and then we're going to merge it to the main trunk. A better approach is to do it in much more smaller chunks. It takes time to get to that level, but if you invest more time in the beginning breaking things to small pull requests or to small units of work, that's always healthier. So one of the things we're measuring is the PR size. And I can tell you, like I've seen the customer that had an initiative and took the PR size from the areas of 300 changes per PR. Changes mean actual code changes, like lines that are being either added or changed, to the areas of like 50. And when you're able to do that, it's almost like everything moves quickly to your pipeline, right? It's easier to review. When somebody gets a review and say, okay, can you help me review this PR? And then you go and there's like 500, changes there, and you need to start review. It's almost like nobody will do it. It's like you need to invest like an hour or 2 hours. But if you do it in small chunks, people have, 5 minutes before the next meeting, they have like the availability to take it. So PR size is very important. Again, pull request size or merge request or whatever we call it is a very important metric to keep like everything smooth in your delivery pipeline. The depth of the review is an important metric that really like. If again, there's no right or wrong here, but if you like do an average of the depth of the review, it will teach you things. I've seen a lot of great developers that the best quality of them, it wasn't like as an individual contributor. It's more about like a reviewer or a reader of code. There's like a very, very famous like blog post from I think 20 years ago about how we the developers, we really like to write code, but reading code is like a very rare quality. People that really like, okay, I'm going to read this and understand every path. It's like so people that are investing and doing deep reviews, meaning like okay, a couple of not just like one comment, suggest other ways, not just give comments around like the styling of the code, maybe actually suggest a couple of alternatives. So deeper reviews will give you higher quality. That's the cheapest form of like getting quality gains, right? Because it's so early in the process. It's like even before QA is in. So if we're able to see that our review depth is going up, it doesn't have to go to like 10 comments on each PR, but over 2 comments, like to the area of 3, that's like these are good numbers. And then the review time and the review cycles are also interesting metrics. So if I'm each review is taking 1 or 2 minutes, that's too short. If each review is taking on average, right? Because there are some PRs there are some efforts that you can look and merge within like 10 seconds. And if each review is taking like 2 days, it's also not that good, because you're putting like a blocker or something that won't streamline your development process. So being aware to the review time and trying to optimize it is very important. And the amount of cycles is also interesting. If I'm issuing a pull request and somebody is reviewing, and then usually you want to close it after 1 or 2 of these cycles, but if people are getting into those areas of 7 or 8 cycles, I've seen, unfortunately, a lot of like debates, and it's getting into like a philosophical area that, what's right, and it's not practical, I think, to try to attack those things inside the review cycle. So that's a very important metric to also give attention to. And time to deploy. Time to deploy basically means I merge the code, how much time it takes it to be released to production, and maybe open it with a feature flag to a bunch of customers. Basically, I believe, and we believe in LinearB, that software development is a team sport. We love sport, so the analogy to sport is like not tennis, not playing this with my own. It's not like, it's more like a team sports. So football to you guys maybe will be like a good analogy. Basketball, whatever. Like, people have different roles, and you need your peers in order to be successful. So this is why, for example, you're seeing these metrics, and you're not seeing like how many commits or PRs an individual had. Again, focus on the team, and good things will happen. So I'll move on to the area of like the projects. And let's, you know what, let's see if you guys have questions, because I've seen that some of the metrics maybe are not straightforward.
How are you measuring review time?
So you're not quite coming through. Can anybody hear?
I think you're asking how are we measuring the review time? Right, correct?
That's right, sorry.
No worries. So review time, basically, again, like I told you in the beginning, cycle time is divided into 4 segments. The review time is basically from when the first comment is out there, when somebody started to pick this pull request to a review. So I gave you the first comment until the pull request is merged, right? So it could be that it's going to take me some time to do the first review, and then somebody is like giving, handling some of the comments, and then another cycle. But all of this, then we'll look at like when did it start, and when the PR was merged, and it will teach you if you want to keep it under like 2 or 3 hours, not blocking. It's hard, but we've seen like people get to those areas.
How do you handle something? For example, sometimes this can take a few days. Maybe people are working on several things at once. So they put a review out there. A few hours later, someone comes along, they have a look, there is a comment. The next day, someone comes in. Like, this would end up with a really long time, but it might actually only have taken 10, 15 minutes to review overall.
It's a great question. I think that, so first of all, still the review time will be from the first comment until it's merged. Then we believe that this is the right measure, because it will also encapsulate inside like all the things you just said, right? If I'm ready to push some code, if I'm a developer and I'm ready like to merge something and get it out and want the value go fast to customers, I think, I need help like to get this out like in 3 to 4 hours. That's like the ultimate. And sometimes things like you described they happen all the time. Somebody's giving a review, I went to do something else, then I go back to it. There's no right or wrong, but we just want to look like the truth in the eye and say, okay, because we have like, all these other things that we're working on, our true, review time is like 3 days. Now, it could be that net time was 3 hours, but it kind of also said, hey, we have context switches, which again is not a bad thing. It's natural and happening to everybody. Our team have it too, but now they are aware. They're saying, okay, so we could have context switches, but still need to go and see where are the open PRs? How can we go back fast and help like close them? So still review time will include the idle time. We're looking for ways to measure the net time, even though I think, again, the gross time is much more important. How much time it took from I want to push this code until I was able to get it merged.
That's really interesting. Thank you.
Sure. I see somebody raising their hand.
Yeah, thanks. In terms of the review depth, not all reviews will happen on GitHub or GitLab or whatever you're using. Some of them will be on Slack. and other areas. And some of the comments that you might get on it might be positive. It might be, I really like what you've done on this thing. So how does that contribute to the review depth metric?
Yeah, great question. Some of them could be on Slack, and maybe before pre-COVID, some of them were even like pair programming on. I'm just sitting next to a peer and doing it like in the old way. Like we believe that it's really important to record the the review inside GitHub, even if you do it on Slack or you do it like offline. Go back and record it. Here's why. That's the best knowledge base that you will build when you onboard a new developer. I've seen this happening when a new developer comes. The first thing that they do, they go and look at PRs and they read historical code, and then they will look at how what's important here. What are the values that are important in this group? So I'm going to look at the comments. People are giving comments on coding, on styling of code, or people are giving comments on architectural choices, or people are giving comments on, like you just said, very positive, great, and they will usually try to align themselves with the culture that is really like inside. So we're encouraged to put this data into GitHub or GitLab or Bitbucket or whatever you use for or Azure DevOps, whatever you use like for source control management. Yeah, sometimes it will happen outside, and sometimes the comments are bad. The comments are good. Comments are not supposed to be all bad. That's great. If somebody had one comment that say, hey, this is great, I really love what you're doing here, it's also great. They gave attention, they read the code, they provided feedback. So this is great. Again, numbers will always generalize things, right? It's still about like, you can still need to dive and see if the sentiment is positive. I see you're like giving a thumbs up, so cool. Any other questions before we move on? Okay, so another thing, this is super interesting. I can tell you a short story. Like when I was a VP of R&D, I was asked to create this report every month. We had like a management meeting, and my CEO said, I want to see what people are working on. How are we staffed across the project and across each project? Where are we investing our time? I remember every month I had this thing coming, and I knew I had to prepare this report, and I collected data from everywhere. So, okay, we have 3 people working on this project. And I remember like it was ridiculous. We got into, I have 0.25 people working on this project that the CEO asked, why are we not moving with that project? So being able to show how are you staffed on the different projects is really important. And predictability on whether it will be on time, yes or no, I think it's a very complex problem to solve. But even just showing, hey, remember this project that we said that this is the most important one? We have 3 people working on it. Are we happy with it? Or should we align more resources to it? So that transparency and openness to just show, this is how we staffed on each project is very, very important. So what we suggest is like to bring at least like the 3 or 4 major efforts, that the team is working on, and show them and show if they're on track, meaning usually it means like, are they getting the same consistent level of investment, right? If we said that we need a critical mass of like 3 or 4 people on each project, and we were able to get it, and all of a sudden like we switch to something else that's important and it's down to 0 and then back to 3, and then you see all this, that's usually a bad sign, right? You want like consistent investment on your epics or project. So another important effort of the scorecard is showing your top projects and how you staffed it, on each one of them. It will also show you if you're spread too thin, which is often something that happens. Everybody, or working in, you know, businesses that are trying to be successful and they want to do so much and they want to you know, create more and more value. But there's like this cap, right, of things that the team can take, and this will give you a great indication if you're there or spread too thin. If you see 0.2 people, 0.3 people over time working on something, meaning that, you know, 30% of one person is just dedicated to the project, probably it won't be successful. Or at least maybe it will, but it will take longer time and probably not like the main thing that the company is working on. The fifth area is cost. This is, I'll start with that. I've seen people alternate the system cost element with uptime sometimes of services, and it's all about the maturity or, you know, the pain points of the company. So, you know, at times where you're still not stable and services are going up and down, you might want to say, okay, this is our uptime, and measure that and reflect that to the executive team, because like it's important for everybody to know at times that this is stable. One of the things that and the company is more mature, you probably shift into like reporting on cost. What our scorecard will give you is like a recommendation to you know, report on overall cost of service, so like whether you work on AWS, Google Compute Engine, Microsoft, or something else, the overall cost like on a weekly or monthly basis. And then there's like the cost per customer that you can add. And another interesting thing that I've seen working and really get good conversations happening with the executive team is like, find your main cost driver or your economical unit, and also try to attribute cost to that. So I'll give you an example. For us, we're a software delivery intelligence tool. So basically we connect, people give us a GitHub access, and we connect to the repositories, and we analyze, you know, all the activity that you see here. And a repo can really affect, you know, our cost. So we have this metric of what's our cost per repository, because if a company comes with like 500 repository, it drives a lot of processing for us, and it will increase our cost. If it's like you know, 2 monorepos or something like that, it's like a small cost. So find the thing that really like impact your cost, and also try to normalize to that. I think that can really help drive interesting conversations with the executive team. So those are the 5 areas of the. I'll go back first really quickly to the metric scorecard that you see, like the weekly metric, investment profile, the team delivery metrics, the major efforts, and the costs. Those are the 5 elements that we recommend bringing to the executive table. And before I move on, like to the last part, where I want to talk a little bit about strategies and what I've seen working and not working when you try to start being data-driven around engineering, I want to see if you still have questions in the metrics area of the house.
Yeah, well, just hi, Ori. I just wanted to know about the cycle time. I used to measure it from conception to delivery. Is it the same for you? Because I understood you implied that the code was already written, or I misunderstood.
Yeah.
How do you measure cycle time?
You're talking about maybe lead time, more like from ideation, right? So like, yeah, the ticket was created, and then how much time it took like to deliver that feature.
Yeah.
Which is also very, very important, but cycle time is a little bit different. It's different because within this story, usually what will happen, it's constructed out of like 5 to 10 different small tasks that people are working on, right? So we need a database migration. We need this in the web application. We need like this to happen in the microservice. We need to go to the provisioning. There's a lot of like changes that will probably support this new feature. Cycle time will actually tell you not that big ideation to completion of the feature. On the small units, how fast we're delivering them. And sometimes it's even more important than the big one, than the feature was completed, because if your team is able like to break it down into small chunks and get them out fast, like, okay, one day something is out, probably shut down, it's still not affecting anything, but the code is out there and it's not breaking anything. Okay, next release is like still the, I don't know, the provisioning service, and it's still not breaking anything. You reduce the risk of when the feature is going out. So cycle time will measure those small increments and how fast you push them. Do you understand the difference, Bruno?
Yeah, I do. Thank you.
Right. It's also super important to measure like lead time, like, okay, ID, and then how much time it took us as a whole, like that feature, like to deploy. Any other questions on the metrics before we try to talk about strategies? Okay, so I'll move to the last area, or close to the last. I want to talk to you about 4 strategies that I've seen working when you want to translate like engineering and those metrics to executives. And again, I had the privilege to sit in the executive table as a VP of R&D, as a CTO, and also now as a CEO. So the first thing I want to offer as a tip is like is to focus on the process and then to tie it to outcomes. I'll give you again, I like the cycle time example again, because I'll tell you a story. When I was sitting in those meetings as a VP of R&D, like even I think my first week as a VP of R&D, I came with all these numbers and I wanted to report to my CEO, here's what's happening to our team. And all of the questions that I've been asked were around like outcomes. When is this feature ready? What is the cost and how can we drive it down? A lot of things in those areas. And in sales, the CEO also asked those questions, but he was also able to see the process that it takes like to make a sale. So top of the funnel is not full. And this is where the sales cycle is being stuck, right? We can't, I don't know, get somebody to a trial, right? And the CEO was actually really interested in the sale process and the phases. And I was saying, how come like I'm only being asked on outcomes, and in the other department, there's like an understanding of the process. So I think if we're able to start educating about the process, and again, cycle time is a great mean like to do that, or a great way, but you can find others, then smart conversations can start to happen, and they move out of just the outcome, and they also spend time in the areas of the process, which is so much fun. I have customers that come to me and talk to me after that and say, okay, like my CEO now is asking me, okay, they're starting to ask smart questions about the process and what can we do to improve that segment. And so when that magic happens, you can feel that engineering is much more connected to the business again. So focus on the process, but then tie to outcome, right? Because if cycle time is short, the value is getting faster to customers. Really simple to explain. Again, if we cut cycle time from 10 days to 1 day, value is being driven faster to customers. Everybody can understand it. So, and executives can connect with it. The second tip or second strategy is like, there's a lot of value to the routine and repeating the same thing. I had people like talking to me and say, okay, I came with these metrics, nobody understood them. So then they did something else. They came into the meeting and said, now we're going to talk every day, every weekly meeting, we're going to talk about something else. Today, we're going to focus on this area. I'm going to take 3 minutes and explain what cycle time is. And then in the second and the third meeting, people started to understand it. And they really appreciated the fact that, you know, there's standard ways to also measure engineering other than feature was on time, not on time, etc. So I would say the important word is routine and education. Education, not in a vain way, but just, hey, there's like standard ways. I want to tell you about engineering. This is how we measure. It's really helpful when you come with confidence and we speak about those metrics. The trade-offs are important. Every manager want to, like when we see in the project, not just saying, oh, we can't do all these projects. Here's an alternate plan that can help us like do 1, 2, but we won't be able to hit it with 3. So trade-offs are super important for this, and even in the metrics area, right? So there are teams that are saying, you know what, like how fast the PR is going through the pipeline and being released is so important to us. So we're deploying a policy. We're saying if an effort is not touching sensitive code and it's small enough to any changes, we trust a single developer to merge it like without the need of somebody reviewing it. If it's something that touches sensitive areas and it's big, maybe we want somebody or maybe 2 reviewers. So you can also explain trade-offs in the development process and how you think of improving that and offer, and create a discussion there. So the trade-offs are really, really important because people don't just want to see numbers. They want to see, okay, these are the numbers. This is what can we do to improve, or if we'll improve that, what will potentially get hurt. And the last thing is what I told you in the beginning. I think when CTOs are coming to the executive table, they should think about themselves as translators, almost like from one language that want to speak like very technically to another language that want to speak very like business metrics and business KPIs. And where I've seen this successful is like when people acknowledge that they are translators and they can bridge between those 2 words. And it goes the other way too, right? If you can go to your developers or your team leaders and say, okay, we presented this, here's what the business is telling us, then you get, again, much more aligned engineering org that works with the business better. I think my last slides are a little bit about promotion of like LinearB and why we're so awesome. So before I'll go to that, I'll see if you guys have questions. Feel free, like whatever you want to discuss, I'm here for you.
I've got a quick question for you. Sometimes you'll have to show a chart and it will go down rather than up. Do you have much insight into sometimes, like if you show a chart that goes down, somebody's going to ask you, why has it gone down? And sometimes it can be difficult to kind of drill back down into the numbers to get the exact thing that caused that. Do you have any advice on how and when to kind of get back into the detail and bring that with you to the board?
Yeah, I love this question. So if I'm presenting a chart that like it's trending down or flat, yeah, I usually want to maybe invest 5 or 10 minutes. And if you have like an engineering metric solution, there are like good ways like to click and see, okay, what are the outliers that kind of like drove my metrics kind of up or down, right? If it's like reward, maybe we missed with one feature, like we released it and it was not good. But then when you come prepared with the answers, I agree with you. It's you control the situation better. You say, hey, yeah, the number is down. Here's the reason. You kind of like, handle all the objections in advance. So yeah, when you just have the numbers, you're absolutely right. It's hard to see it. So whenever I see something like too extreme, go into the raw data and doing some investigation before that. And then you're able like to explain it. And transparency is important. We're humans. We're sometimes, trending up, sometimes down.
Yeah, just to add to that, I think you're spot on, but also explaining it in a business context. So don't try and sort of waffle it with technical metrics, because then you just lose the board again. Whereas if you break it down into, usually there's a human reason, a decision or something that was the wrong decision, and explain it in those terms, then it probably go across better.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I kind of connected to that point. One of the things that I've been finding lately is that there's a drive to connect some of these metrics not only on an engineering terms, but also on financial terms. I saw that you'd connected a few of them directly to finances, Ori, but do you go to the extra step, or do you like advise people to go to the extra step of adding like of financing or financializing the metrics for things like those, you know, turnaround time or things like that?
It's a good question. We keep thinking about it. There's like you can quantify like those problems, right? Like rework, you can theoretically look at how much value and how much like the cost of like, you know, the payroll, and if the 3% of like the code is going away, you're like only utilizing 27%. It all depends. It's really depends on the crowd. There's like, again, board meetings, and there's like those staff meetings weekly. I recommend avoiding, you know, like people payroll stuff, right? And I wouldn't do that. I think about cost of service, like uptime, those things I will like include. That could usually lead like to some because it's not like a utility function development. There's creativity there. There's a lot of like other things you want to create. So I would be cautious if like, you know, adding like the payroll element. I know some big organizations really want it, like how efficient they are looking for the silver line metrics. Okay, we have 100 developers. How much are we really utilizing? So from that, I really recommend trying to avoid it if you can.
Yeah, I found it useful only really on a trend basis. In other words, the bean counters are normally only worried if there's more beans going out than usual, or less beans, you know. So they want to know the outliers. So as long as you stick to trends, then you're probably okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, Ori, I had a question on that though. I was wondering, are you able to tie any of the metrics in the code to the kind of marketing metrics? So in a SaaS app, page views, time on pages, maybe you know, any kind of market. Is there any way to do that? Maybe not necessarily in your product now, but have you got any thoughts about that?
Yeah, I think so. You're when you're saying time on page, etc., is like when you talk about it's in the context of a consumer app or something like that, and like the end product, how many? Yeah, like we have a lot of thoughts around that. That's the holy grail. Like if you can understand the investment you had in a feature, right, and then
exactly, that's exactly what I'm thinking, is joining up the circle.
Yeah, that's we're gonna get there as a company. It's really interesting because I've seen one very smart customer that did this super cool thing that they, you know, launched darkly in all of those companies, and the feature flag have integrations back to Jira, and then you can see, okay, I worked on this story. How many people really open up that feature? So that's kind of, I think, in the avenue of the things you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
We want to go all the way and see like real usage of features and go back and tie it back, like how successful, like what good happened there that we want to replicate. So short answer, we don't have anything like that at this point, but definitely on the radar, and I'm starting to see people doing interesting stuff with it.
Cool, thanks.
I guess a key place to start with that is ensuring that each feature has a success metric tied. So, you know, when you're accepting that feature, it has the people creating the feature should provide, you know, this is what we expect to see if this feature is implemented.
Yes, success criteria. Absolutely. So I will promote us a little bit, because before people run away and just say that, you know, at LinearB, we do it, we're a software delivery intelligence platform. We help to do everything. A lot of the things you just have seen here, like how can you measure, we do all the heavy lifting. It's something, our product is like self-serve, and you can start it for free, which is, again, for one team, very small team, up to 8 people. And I wouldn't dive into everyone, but our philosophy is like, you got to get value to executives and team leaders and developers. Each one of them are getting value. If it's like just a manager product, it's not, we don't like, we like it when we deploy LinearB and it's being adopted by team leaders to actually control their process, executives to do all the things we just said. And developers are also getting value. We're rolling out features like, every time somebody is just finished reviewing something for me, I'm getting like a Slack alert or Microsoft Teams or whatever we're using. And I'm just kind of also like helping shortening like the delivery and responding fast. And I'm getting alerts on, quality risk and things that are stuck. And basically, it's an awesome product. You can try it if you feel like. If you're not ready, what you can do is go and download our metrics scorecard. It's for free. You can take the template and adjust it. We're going to improve it because right now, you need to use our UI, etc. But even if, again, you're not using our product, we're making this a freebie where you can just plug in numbers into an Excel, right? And then we'll generate this thing for you. So it's like a good working tool. Then you come in the morning, like before, like you have their staff meeting, you spend like 10 minutes just plugging numbers and you get this deck, and it kind of like teaches you, what's working and what's, what you should improve. That's it. That's what I have for today. Really, really appreciate it. You guys taking the time and listening to me. Hopefully this was helpful for you.
Thank you so much, Ori. Fantastic.
Thank you very much, Ori.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Ori.
Stick around for a minute or so, and then if anybody wants to ask some questions. But otherwise, I know we're at the top of the hour now, so feel free to head off.
I can stay for like 5 more minutes, 10 more minutes if anybody has questions from my perspective.
Can I ask for LinearB, the product? Presumably it connects up to like your GitHub or something. I mean, in terms of security concerns and the kinds of things that you do with that data and what you've got access to, how does that all work out? I mean, yeah, it looks exciting, but I'm just like, how would you get, confidence to open the door for you guys to do this kind of analysis?
It's a good question. I would ask the same and do all my inspections. Basically, we get access to Git and to the project management tool as well. And we, first of all, we're ISO certified, and we're going to do SOC 2, I think in Q2. We're highly aware of like the risk there, so we'll never store like code or anything risky on our side, only like the metadata, right? So we'll analyze things, but we'll never persist, the crown jewels and the IP on our side. It's more about PRs and PR names and numbers. And yeah, we have a high level of like, security processes, including, pen tests, everything that needs to happen. So customers, and we have a lot, knock on wood, we have like a growing list of customers, and we have a lot of them are giving us the trust and trusting us with their data. Privacy is secure too, like names are anonymized when needed. So it's all about like reducing the digital footprint, right? Not saving what you don't need to save. But you can feel free like to go to the website and ask for all the information, and we'll jump on the meeting. You can write me an email, shoot me an email after this meeting, and we'll make sure like one of our security people jumps in and explains this in more detail.
Any other questions?
How long does it take to process this kind of information?
Well, so when you onboard to LinearB, the system already scans back like 3 months of history. So you get like a baseline, right? The dashboard. This process usually takes like an hour or two. Again, it's a self-serve, then you get an email, your dashboard is ready. From that moment on, everything is real time. So like working with webhooks can alert you, when something is stuck and waiting for too long. You can create your own policy on what you will want to be notified and what not. And again, really easy to start. You can start. We have our free tier is like for one team of up to 8 people, but it's free forever. So we have a lot of small customers with one team that are using the product and enjoying it for free without paying. Once you want it ready to try it, like for bigger, you say, okay, I have like, I don't know, 50 developers and I have multiple teams. Then you can also stay on trial, but it's limited on time, and you need to take a decision in the end if you want to pay for the product.
No, thanks. That sounds interesting.
I'm going to put my email here on the notes in the chat, just so if anyone wants to just send me an email, feel free. I send it everyone. Anything else I can help with?
Right.
Okay, thank you again.
Well, thanks. Thank you so much, Ori. Fantastic talk.
Yeah,
okay, thanks.
Thank you.
See you. Bye-bye.
Right, yeah, bye-bye.